I went to the opening this year, and when they've asked me, do you want me to show you, they see me looking at something in a glass case, I always say no. Don't bother showing it to me because I promise you, I don't happen to have $85,000 to buy a book. One person did show me a book, even though I told her, I cannot buy this. Would you like to see? That's okay. Would you like to look at it? I said yes. So she was nice enough to show it to me. I'm afraid even to touch a book like that. I feel my life would turn into a Henry short story. Now I have to spend all my money for the rest of my life trying to pay you back for this thing. I was surprised at how cavalier people were around the books. I saw a guy put a drink on a book. If he did that in my house, I'd kill him. One of the things I remember about those guys, they were all guys that were like all little dusty Jewish men who were very irritated if you wanted to buy a book, because they were not really in business. They were there so they could read all day. And if it was, warm, they would be sitting outside like on a box. They were covered in dust. Their hands were yellow from nicotine. They always had glasses, of course, because they've been reading in the dark since they were, 6 years old. And if you would go up to them and ask very politely, how much is this book? Half the time they wouldn't even look up. I always imagined I would be like that if I owned a bookstore. And you could just crawl around in there and you would find stuff. They didn't know what they had. If you could get his attention, he'd make up a price. But the price would be like 40 cents. So I like that. But the Strand was never like that because it was so big. But very often I would find books at the Strand. I would bring them to the guy and he would go, where did you find this? And then I would say, oh, behind that door. He said, you're not supposed to go there. That stuff hasn't even been priced yet. So I think part of my affection for this is crawling around in the bookstore, which I still do, even though you're not supposed to do that. It used to be that if I was in Midtown and I had like an hour between things to do, I would just go into a bookstore. And I always say to people, you know what they used to call independent bookstores? Bookstores. All bookstores were independent. The people who worked there were real booksellers. They decided what would go on the window, what would go on the counter. It's not like when Barnes & Nobles came in, which now people who are young constantly say to me, oh, my Barnes & Noble's closed. And I think, we hated Barnes & Nobles. They put everyone out of business.
I mean, you say the word Kindle, and I think you'll get some members of the book trade who feel a shudder go up their spine. And a lot of people wonder, where's the future of this industry going? If we don't have books printed anymore, and you can buy books directly sent to your electronic device without there ever being a hard copy, what are we going to sell? And I think that's a very fair concern. And I think a lot of people feel that, and probably the most incredible example of that was in 2006 at the Academy Awards, when Larry McMurtry, with his writing partner, was awarded Best Screenplay for an adaptation from a book for Brokeback Mountain.
And finally, I'm going to thank all the booksellers of the world. Remember that Brokeback Mountain was a book before it was a movie. From the humblest paperback exchange to the masters of the great bookshops of the world, all are contributors to the survival of the culture of the book, a wonderful culture which we mustn't lose.
I've had, book people tell me, if a book is signed to a specific person and that person is famous, it makes it more valuable. If it's signed to, Joe, and no one knows who Joe is, it makes it less valuable than if it's just signed. To me, this goes into the stamp collecting category. I don't know about this. The reason that there are many, many more art collectors than there are book collectors is because it's a display of wealth. First of all, when I was young, when I first came to New York, it was called the art world. Okay, now it's called the art market. I rest my case. Before there was television, I would say probably more people did read, because there was no other entertainment you could have in your house. More status used to attach to it. People used to pretend to read more. Because when I was young, novelists were much more important in the culture than they are now. I mean, to me, a book is the closest thing there is to a human being. That's why I think that writers are like gods. I personally have never been able to throw a book away. I have seen books in trash, and to me, it's like seeing a human head in the trash, even if it's a horrible book.